Hello again, aspiring Richmond scientists, and welcome to another installment of RPS at Home, Week 7 Science Edition. My name is Mr. Jackson. Today, we will continue our study of ecosystems. We will review some information, and then we will learn some new things. So, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we will be talking about 4.5b, Organization of Populations, Communities, and Ecosystems and how they interrelate. We have a lot of things to do, so let's go ahead and get started. But before we jump into some new information, I need to correct something. The last time you saw me, I was introducing the topic of ecosystems to you. Well, I made a mistake and called this furry little creature a mammal. This is not a mammal. This is a bird. And this is a bird because of classification systems, which we're going to review a little bit about today. This organism does not produce live birth. This organism does not give milk to its babies. So this is a bird based on classification. So bad, Mr. Jackson, let's put an X through mammals and let's turn that into birds. Now we may begin. So review, ecosystem, all the living and non-living components in an environment. Organism, fancy word for living things. Adaptations, changes to meet the needs of one's environment. And if the organism does not adapt, the organism will not survive. We have two different types of adaptations. We have structural or part/function adaptation, like a claw, fur, teeth. Behavioral adaptation, how the organism acts, how the organism behaves. An example there is migration, hibernation, activation. Organisms learn from one another, and it changes the way they act. Classification. This is what Mr. Pryor talked about last week. And classification is another one of those reading skills that's found its way into science. So, classification, to put into groups, to compare and contrast. So, as an example, Mr. Pryor talked about the kingdoms. I'm going to review the two main ones, which are the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. So, why do we classify? We classify to put things in groups to see how they're alike and see how they're different. So when something new comes along, we know which group to put it in. And then if it's a completely new discovery, what are they going to do? They're going to create a whole nother group. So review for plant kingdom. The two subgroups are vascular and non-vascular. Vascular plants, they have a tube, they have a stem, they have a transportation route from the roots to the little factories on the trees, the leaves. Non-vascular is like moss. It's flat. It doesn't have a tube. It grows flat and absorbs through the air. Very interesting. Then the kingdom that we are in, animalia or animals, has to do with having a backbone or not. So we have vertebrates, a spine, and invertebrates, no spine. Amazingly, 98% of life on this planet are invertebrates. So if you can guess real quick, those are bugs. Yay for that. Moving on. Now we'll dive into the meat of today's lesson. And it's not that bad. It's two vocabulary words. So our first word is population. So when you hear the word population, you think about a bunch of people. What is the population of that group in Virginia? Number of people. But in science terms, we're talking about the number of organisms of the same species that live in a particular area. So, an example, If you have a classroom of students, then you have a population of humans. Moving on. Ooh. We have a community. And a community is all the organisms living in a particular area. So you're saying to yourself, well, they sound a little bit alike. That's because they kind of are alike. But our example of community is like a forest. And in that forest, when you're talking about a community, you're talking about everything in that community: the birds, the crickets, the beetles, the bees, the worms, the trees, etc., etc., etc. So, in a forest, a community is all of the organisms in that area. So, here's some quick examples. This is a population of humans, a bunch of species in one area. So if you had a flock of birds flying over your head, that would be a population of what species that is. There goes a population of geese. There's a population of robins in my backyard. And the other example for community is everything in one place. So this is a forest community. So there we have Mr. Fox, Miss Deer with her little fawn there, little bunnies, raccoons, and then everything else that's living in there. So what I want you to think about is the idea of the ecosystem, because that's what we're still talking about here. So let's dive in to today's lesson. First, log on or look at the food web at the picture on the top of your student journal. So let's just hop right on. Well, let's walk through everything. What do you see? Think and wonder. Then write your answers in the see, think, and wonder chart beneath the picture. Then observe the pictures. How are they alike? How are they different? Please write your responses in the journal. Then we're going to watch a cool video. You'll go back to your journal. You'll review some definitions that we just covered, and then we have an optional activity. So let's hop on over to the journal. So again, you just click, boom, and pop it right up. So here is mine. Please, before you get started, make a copy. So all you do is go here, file, whoops, and make a copy. And then you can title it yours, and then that way it's yours. I mean, if you are organized, you can have it in a folder and be more organized, because then you're classifying. Oh, I love it. All right, so day one. What do you see, think, and wonder about the picture? What's going on here? What do you see? What do you think? What are you wondering? Please take a moment to jot down your answers. Then we take it a step further. Let me make my head bigger. Ah, so what is alike and different in these two pictures? Take a look at their organisms. There's some more organisms down here. Take a look. Picture one, picture two. Please go down and tell me how they're alike and how they're different. How do they compare? How do they contrast? Next, we'll go to a video on food chain versus food web. Please open it up and take a look at it. Boom. This is where you'll land right here. Don't get stuck in YouTubeville. So, after you watch the video, please think about what the main difference is between a food chain and a food web. Review, we already talked about all these things just a moment ago. So if you'd like, hit the review button get your answers and write them down in the review. We also have these two at the bottom. Finally, if you have a chance, please look outside and see if you can observe organisms that would be part of a food chain or a food web. After you identify it, can you draw it? Today, we've talked about communities and populations. Wednesday, we'll talk about energy pyramids. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you and stay safe. Bye-bye.